I wish I hadn't opened my eyes. Maybe then I could have gone back to sleep. Nothing I saw made any sense. Blurry metal tentacles attached to the floor trembled in a small cool breeze as they reached upwards just shy of the ceiling. My vision slowly adjusted to the black haze that surrounded me, with some assistance from the dull flickering light beneath my feet, everything tinged a strange shade of red. The rest of the room came into view, clearer this time. Decades-old concrete became visible, yet still cloudy in places. Once solid grey, now splattered and smudged with green. Directly opposite me was, I think, a sign, yet no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't read it, because some idiot had written it upside down. I wish I hadn't taken a breath. Maybe then I wouldn't have had to smell the pungent, rotting odour that penetrated my senses, a combination of damp mould and stale air. I could taste nothing but metal and salt. I tried to swallow the hot liquid in my mouth, only able to get down so much before the remainder decided to come back up and make a pool in the roof of my mouth. There was something familiar about that taste, bitter and unpleasant, making me feel the need to gag. I wish I hadn't been able to hear. Maybe then I wouldn't have had to listen to that annoying thumping in the back of my head, beating and screaming like an overworked boiler ready to explode. The immense pressure in my ears made me need to cover them, no matter how heavy my arms were. Then there was the dripping of water, impacting at regular intervals. It sounded like it was coming from right above me, although I didn't feel where they landed. I wish I hadn't been able to feel. Maybe then I wouldn't have felt more of that hot liquid trickle from my nose and into my eyes. It stung upon contact, and I tried to shake my head to remove at least some of what was there, but something was wrong. Gravity didn't seem to work right. Why was it going into my eyes? The next thing I noticed was the pain in my feet. Those strange metal tentacles again, wrapped around my ankles. No, not tentacles. Chains. Chains wrapped around my ankles, and the room was filled with them. Chains and hooks. I wish I hadn't tried to think. Maybe then I wouldn't have realized what was going on here. The room wasn't upside down. I was, swinging back and forth as the chains and shackles held me in place. And they weren't trembling, but I was. The taste in my mouth, the liquid coming from me, now forming a puddle on the ceiling, was blood. My blood. I wish I hadn't looked at my chest. Maybe I wouldn't have seen one of those hooks lodged into my body, crimson around the flesh it had pierced. It too was attached to a chain that followed into a winch below me, ready to start up at any moment and slice me open. I wish I hadn't panicked. Maybe I wouldn't have tried to grab the rusted hook and pull it from me. For whatever my efforts were worth, it didn't budge. That was the moment the real pain set in. Blinding white excruciation struck me like lightning, nearly taking me back into dark unconsciousness. My muscles tensed harshly, and my breaths began to quicken sporadically, only causing more pain as I felt it split my ribcage and cut my lung. God, I wish I didn't scream. Maybe then I wouldn't have begun to choke on the blood filling my airways. My coughs and gurgled cries of agony echoed and bounced off the walls, imitating me in a devious mockery. A burning sensation in my stomach accompanied the suffering and hurriedly forced me to vomit. Regardless of how it happened, whether it was triggered by the pain or the sheer volume of blood I swallowed, red bile burnt my throat and mouth as I purged it from my system. Tens of minutes passed until I couldn't scream or writhe around anymore. Any slither of energy or will I had left had been emptied along with the contents of my stomach. I let gravity take my head and arms, dropping me carelessly into the same position I had been in when I woke up. There were no other sounds in the room but the continuous droplets hitting the ground, and eventually, my slow, tired whimpering. Tears mixed with blood as they rolled off my brow. Then the whirring started. The hook and chain became taut, and the blade crept down my torso. It moved millimeters at first, but it was enough to emit the sound of quiet cracking and tearing. The melodic rhythm of the machine was frighteningly gentle, threatening to lull me to a sleep that I knew I wouldn't recover from. hypnotizing me into a sinister state of calm. I continued to sob, but the pain wasn't there anymore. The revelation came to me much too quickly. I was going to die here. "5 centimeters had passed. I didn't have any scale of time after the machine came to life. It took some mechanical effort, but the hook was now slicing at a steady pace. I reminisced on my life, relaying the experiences I had been through over and over in my head, never wanting to forget them. The good, the bad, the painful, the euphoric. They were mine and mine alone. Something these chains would never be able to cut deep enough to find. The memories wouldn't last. Then again, neither would I. 10 centimeters had passed. The hook tore a gash that allowed fresh blood to ooze down to my neck. I hung there, unfeeling and uncaring. I thought about the people I'd met along my life's journey. Those that I'd loved and who had loved me back. Those who had hated me, and I hated them back. Both equal to me now. Whatever these chains wanted from me, they sure as hell couldn't take away them. I imagined my closest friends, crashing into the room and screaming my name, as if trying to wake me from this nightmare. Not that I would hear them if they did. My shaking hand reached out into the empty air. The warmth of someone else's closed the space. The consoling feeling of another's touch sent shivers down my already trembling posture. Of course, I'm sure there wasn't really anyone there, but the room didn't know that. 20 centimeters had passed. The gash became a hole as my organs were ruptured and I was dissected. I thought about the present, the unlikely conundrum of being locked in a dark room with the intent of being mutilated until my dying breath. I chuckled to myself in between gasps for oxygen at my bizarre predicament. My strained heart pumped whatever remainder of life fluid was left in my system. I thought about the future I might have had. The dreams I had on a rainy night, giving me hope for a brighter tomorrow. Dreams that these chains could never hope of destroying. I imagined warm, isolated beaches of white sand and azure seas meekly lapping at the shore, watching the sunset with the person I could have met. I wish I could have met. 40 centimeters had passed. Chunks of my flesh and matter were now falling to the floor into a heap of gore. I was just barely able to move my head. Somehow I was still here. My limbs, however, had long since gone numb, as the cold started to crawl into my bones. Blood so viscous it turned almost onyx. A heart, still beating like the ticking of a clock, delicately counting down the seconds and calming my nerves as the final moments approached ever closer. The feelings of agony I had been through only moments earlier completely fleeted, the pure scarlet in my vision narrowing as I struggled to keep my eyes open. Eventually, even this I stopped fighting for. At last, my heart gave its final, pitiful moan of life as it too grew still, the air in my lungs cooling and the light flickering into darkness. These chains couldn't hold me down anymore.